So welcome to the Donna J. Slovensky SHP Endowed Lecture. This series honors Professor and Senior Associate Dean Emerita Donna Slovensky, who served as a faculty member for nearly 50 years. She taught more than 100 different courses to thousands of future healthcare professionals on what I like to call the essentials to being a true health professional: ethics, management, quality, safety, leadership, and more. Donna, would you please stand up to be recognized, and please give a warm round of applause to Dr. Slow. For each Slovensky lecture, we invite someone unique and innovative and has overcome adversity. Year one, we had artist Phil Hansen, who overcame a tremor in his drawing hand to become a world-renowned creative. Remember, embrace the shake. Year two, we had UAB's own Matt Might. His son, Bertrand, had a rare genetic disease, which led Matt to precision medicine, then to AI, where he is reshaping healthcare. For year three, we have Noah Galloway. When you checked in, you received an autographed copy of Noah's best-selling book, Living with No Excuses. I cannot recommend reading this book enough. It is so inspiring. You probably know Noah as a military veteran, Purple Heart Award double amputee, or finalist on Dancing with the Stars, or the winner of Fox's American Grit, or as an extreme sports enthusiast, or a husband and a father. But he is so much more. I wish there was a different way to introduce Noah other than just labeling his accomplishments. I saw an interview where he talked about how people become what they're labeled and how a label just puts you in a box that you can't escape. And if you've seen Noah up close and in person, you know I'm not about to give this guy a label or try to put him in a box. Another piece he mentioned in an interview is that each of those labels are really just one chapter of his life. They do not define him or his life. He said, no matter how old you are, no matter where you are, you can start a new chapter. So without further ado, please welcome the man who has already literally and figuratively written many inspired chapters and will continue to write so many more years to come. Ladies and gentlemen, the 2025 Donna J. Slovensky SHP Dean's Endowed Lecturer, Mr. Noah Galloway.
Thank you. Thank you. As I was preparing for this speech, I thought about a story that I really enjoy about a lumberjack who is chopping wood. And as he's chopping, his axe starts to become dull. And a passerby says, hey, you should sharpen that blade. And the lumberjack says, I don't have time to sharpen my blade. I have too much wood to cut. Now, when I hear that story, I love it because I think we can all kind of relate to it, where we get caught up in what we're doing and not concentrating on needs to be done. I'm definitely one of those people. I'm going to share my story of different experiences that I've had, highs and lows and things that I'm very grateful for and where they've taken me and the lessons I've learned. And I'm going to start that story right here at UAB because I was a student here in 2001. And my first semester was in 2001. I was 20 years old. September 11th was a Tuesday. I didn't have class that morning, so I slept in. And the phone rang, and I answered it. And a friend of mine, Justin, was on the other line. And he said, turn on the TV. There's been an accident, a plane crash. And I turned the TV on, and on every channel, they were playing it. Newscasters were talking about pilot error. I remember watching where that plane had hit, and you could notice all the rooms and floors that were above it. And we were all concerned about everyone in that building. And then I watched with the rest of the world when that second plane hit. I remember the screams around the cameraman when it happened. I watched for as long as I could. Then there was the Pentagon, the plane that went down in Pennsylvania. I put my shoes on, I threw a shirt on, I went for a run. And I did a lot of thinking. The only sound I heard was the sound of my breath and my feet hitting the pavement. But the same thing kept going through my mind. I'm 20 years old, I'm physically fit, and I love my country. So there's only one thing I could do. I have an uncle that I'm real close to that's a Vietnam veteran. He was a paratrooper with the 173rd, was on his second deployment in Vietnam when he was severely injured and sent home. And he's the one who's always told me, if you ever go in the military, go airborne infantry so you're right up front. Well, that's what I did. I went to the recruiter, signed up as an infantryman, went through basic training, went through jump school, and they got orders to go to Fort Campbell, Kentucky to serve the 101st Screaming Eagles. When I got there, our division commander was General Petraeus, an incredible leader. In 2003, we loaded up and we went to Kuwait. And we sat for 3 weeks waiting for the word to cross the berm and head north to Baghdad. The way we invaded Iraq in 2003, the Marines went in through the west, southwest. Us, the 101st, went into the southeast. Al-Najaf, Karbala. We both hit Baghdad. And after we hit Baghdad, we pushed to a city called Mosul. And that's where we took it over, and that's where we stayed. Never lived on a camp. We lived with the locals. I enjoyed it. It was exciting. It was dangerous. But there was also a lot of humanitarian that I found that I really enjoyed with the local people. And it was in Iraq that I realized I love this job. I love wearing this uniform. So I decided in Iraq that this was going to be my career. This is what I'm going to do. In a combat zone, I re-enlisted to stay with the 101st, to stay with my company. I had decided I'm either going to die in combat or retire an old man. There was no in between. After a year in Iraq, we returned back to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, started training, prepping, and then we headed out on our second deployment. Our second deployment was much different. In that gap, my oldest son was born. And it was a lot more challenging deploying to combat with a child. But I knew the job I had and what I wanted to do. The second deployment, they put us in southwest Baghdad, an area known as the Triangle of Death, an area that had earned its name. Every unit that was there before us took a beating, and we were no different. Within the first week, we lost our first 5 guys, and it never seemed to end. One night, December 19th of 2005, our platoon, an infantry platoon, is made up of about 30 men. And half of us went in one direction, while the other half of us went on a mission on another direction. And the group I was with, we finished first, and we headed back to an old potato factory that we were living out of. When we got there, I laid down. Because when you live in a combat zone and you get a chance to rest, you take it. Well, just as I dozed off, my platoon leader, Lieutenant Jerry Edson, woke me up. And he said, "Hey, Galloway, there's nothing important going on. We just need to take the Humvees and go pick up the rest of the platoon. We need empty seats, so there's no need in going. Just wanted you to know we were leaving." And I jumped up and said, "No, sir." I said, "If y'all go, I go." I told him, if y'all go and something bad happens, I will never forgive myself. So I said, "I'm going and I'm driving the lead vehicle." It was about 2 o'clock in the morning. We loaded up, 3 of us in a Humvee, and we took off down these dark roads. In 2005 in Iraq, where you would drive with your headlights off and night vision goggles on. That made it hard to detect where you were on the road. The early roadside bombs, they would set up on the side of the road and they'd run a wire and they'd lay in the bushes. And as you drove through, they would detonate it. Well, then we would just shoot up the bushes on whatever side the explosion came on. So then they started using Motorola pagers. Then they could be anywhere and detonate that bomb. Then there was a company that designed antennas that went on all the Humvees that would scramble that signal. So it wasn't uncommon for us to be driving down the road and a huge explosion happened just in front of her, just behind you. Because somebody somewhere was hitting that button, but it just wasn't going off at their timing. Now here it was, 2 o'clock in the morning, night vision goggles on, headlights off. And with night vision goggles, you can see well, but you can't see everything. And one thing I didn't see that night was a tripwire stretched across the road. A tripwire that when my front tires hit it, it detonated a roadside bomb large enough that when it hit my door, it threw this 9,000-pound armored Humvee flying through the air and landing in a canal running adjacent to the road. Thankfully, it landed wheels down. I don't remember any of it. My buddy said that my arm was immediately taken off, had a huge hole in my jaw. The water was up to my chest, and my legs were tangled up in the wreckage. They struggled to get me out of the vehicle, out of the water, up the embankment, into another Humvee, rushed me to the potato factory. Medics worked on me there. From there, they flew me to a camp in Baghdad to a hospital in Germany to Walter Reed Army Medical Center in D.C. Now, in Vietnam, at the height of Vietnam, for every one soldier killed, 7 survived. In Iraq in 2005 to 2007, for every one soldier killed, 27 survived. That's because of body armor, better technology, better training, and how quickly they can get a soldier out of combat and back to the States. They typically do that in 24 to 48 hours. I was injured December 19th. I woke up at Walter Reed on Christmas Day, unaware of what had happened or how I got there. They had reached out to my parents. They were going to fly my parents to Germany. They were going to let them have their goodbyes. And the day they were going to fly out, they got another call that said, he's stable enough, we're going to get him to Walter Reed. And that's when they met me there. I woke up just as my parents were walking in the room. I remember seeing my mom's face, and something in the back of my mind said, smile so she knows you're okay. I don't know why I thought that. I love to just sound like just an amazing son. But I knew that if they were there, I was somewhere safe. And I knew there would be a concern. My mom is about yay tall. Curly white hair. Has had white hair my entire life. When I was little, everyone always thought she was my grandmother because her hair turned white so early. Freckles, big glasses, just an adorable little woman, but very unassuming. Her brother is that Vietnam veteran uncle of mine. That side of the family, there's some tough folks. My mom is the firm believer in ripping a bandage right off. Don't hesitate. My mom stood at my bedside and told me, she said, Noah, you've lost your left arm above the elbow, your left leg above the knee. Your right leg is severely injured. You have injuries to your right hand. Your jaw was shattered and your mouth was wired shut. And then she told me that my wife, the mother of my son, that it's too much for her. She would not be at the hospital, that the marriage was over. And in my mom's fashion, she told me, she said, that the dog that they were watching, my German Shepherd, Dave, they said that he got ill and they had to put him down. It didn't take me long to realize an arm and a leg, you get prosthetics. A wife you can replace, but a good dog. I love sharing that story. It's real. I know part of you are like, oh, that was just a nice little anecdote. No, it's real. But that's just how my family is. It's about just ripping that bandage off and, all right, what's the next step? What are we going to do now? My father has an interesting story. When he was a teenager, he was working in a plant and a machine malfunctioned and squished his left hand. They tried to save it, but they couldn't. They ended up amputating it just below the elbow. My entire life, I grew up with a father with one hand who didn't wear a prosthetic and did construction. He taught me how to roof houses, do room additions, plumbing, you name it. He did it with one hand. So as I laid in that hospital room, I'll tell you, I was like any other kid growing up. My dad would talk and I'd kind of listen. But suddenly, his word was gospel. He'd experienced things that I was going to experience. Now, I do recall that as much as he shared with me, deep down, I remember thinking, well, that's what you went through. It's not what I'm going to go through. So I rushed out of that hospital, moved back to Alabama, rushed into a second marriage, had 2 more children. That marriage didn't work out, and it ended. As all this was happening, I didn't know where to go in life, what to do. So I went to what I always went back to as a child, and that was in the gym. I joined a 24-hour gym. I started working out in the middle of the night. There was no books, magazines, nothing on the internet that could tell me how to work out missing an arm and a leg. So I had to figure it out. And I started using machines and kettlebells for my right side, an ankle strap on my arm to work my chest, my shoulder, my back. Got a running leg, started running. Started feeling good about myself. I quit going in the middle of the night and I started going in the middle of the day or in the middle of the evening, because that's when you know everyone's there. And then once everybody at that gym knew who I was, I went and joined another gym. Then once everybody knew me there, I went and joined another gym. I started making this name for myself as this guy who was taking people's excuses away. I was inside a Gold's Gym in Pelham, Alabama at 4:30 in the morning one day. And a guy walked up to me and said, "I'm here because you're here." I just looked at him. He says, "I knew that if the guy missing an arm and a leg could be at the gym, there's no reason I can't be here as well." That was huge for me, to feel like I was making a difference. I started sharing it on social media. And then one day I get a phone call from that lieutenant, Jerry Edson, that was in the Humvee with me. See, everything hit me. The gunner got a little shrapnel on his legs, and Lieutenant Edson was in the seat next to me. And it shattered his left wrist. He got cut up from the bulletproof glass, but he was fine physically. So he reaches out to me and he says, "Hey, I see that you're getting back into fitness. There's this race just north of Atlanta," this is where he'd moved back to, "that I want you to look up, and if you think you can do it, I think we should do it together." I looked it up. It was a 5K obstacle course race called a Warrior Dash. It's fun. They're exciting. People wear costumes. We go and we do this race, and it kicked my butt. But Jerry was with me every step of the way, helping me through every obstacle. One of them, we're almost to the finish line. We come out of the wood line, we turn right, and there's this 2-story wall, completely flat. Every so many feet, a 2x4 is sticking out, and there's ropes hanging down. Jerry says, "Well, how are you going to get up that?" I said, "I don't know, but we're going to figure it out." I go over to it, and with one hand, I grab that rope, and I'm able to pull all my body weight up and get my foot on that first board. Jerry held the bottom of the rope, and I'd slide my hand up, and I'd pull myself up and on to the next, and then the next, and the next. This obstacle is at a turn where all these spectators are standing. Whether it be people there just cheering on friends and family, people that have already finished the race, they're watching some people just fly up it. Some struggle, some go around it, that's okay. But when I reached the top of that structure, I heard everyone erupt into cheers. I come down the other side, we crossed the finish line, and all these people wanted to know my story. They wanted to meet me. They wanted to take a picture with me. I looked at Jerry and I was like, "Well, we got to do more of these. This is awesome." So I changed the way I was training. I adapted to what I was doing. And I started doing the races more and more. I went from doing a small 5K to doing 10 and 12 mile tough mudders, Spartan races. I started running marathons. I got into mountain climbing. I started pushing my way into anything that I shouldn't be doing. I did an event called the Spartan Death Race. When they used to host this event, it was in the mountains of Vermont. And they try to break you mentally and physically. Not a lot of people sign up for it. But one winter, I signed up with 99 other people. Now, I'm the only one with a disability. And I also am aware that something's going to be physical and timed. And I'm not going to be as fast as everyone else. And that's okay. I've already got it in my head. When that moment comes, I'm going to ask the cadre who are working in shifts that when that moment comes, if I could continue and be an unofficial finisher. Because everyone's there to get that coveted death race skull that has that year's. I know, you're like, what? It's sitting in my bathroom by my sink. My wife doesn't care for it either. But I go into this race thinking, okay, I'm not going to complete it. I just want to see how far I can go. Well, at hour 58, they told the 20 of us that were still there that we'd finished that year's death race. That was huge for me because immediately I realized that 80 fit men and women quit, not because it was too physical, but because they stopped right here. And I kept going. So that was one of those doors that opened that was like, well, what else is possible? All those races caught the attention of Men's Health. In 2015, I was on the cover of Men's Health. They called me the ultimate guy. It was their best sold issue. I've got several copies of it. When it hit the shelves, I got a phone call from Ellen DeGeneres' people. They said, Ellen wants you on. I said, well, let's do this. I flew out to LA, had a great time, flew home. The minute that episode aired, the phone started ringing. Survivor wanted me. Oh, love Survivor. But it was one phone call. It's X amount of weeks, no contact back home. You get voted off, you stay with the crew, there's no contact back home. I was like, man, thanks but no thanks. But I got 3 kids here in Alabama. They're more important than a television show. So I passed up on it. Another show called, basically like the death race. And I was like, man, I bet I looked awesome out there. But again, it was too much time away from my children. So I said no. Now, this wasn't me holding out for something bigger and better. 2 shows that thousands of people try out for wanted me, and I said no. So I wasn't expecting anyone else to call. And then Dancing with the Stars calls me. And they're like, are you familiar with our show? I said, I've heard of it. I've never seen it. Do you have any dance experience? I do not. Well, if you'll do our show, we'll put you in a house in LA for the duration of the time you're here. And I said, with a smile on my face, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I got to stay here in Alabama. My kids can't do it. Without hesitation, Dina Katz, the executive producer, said, that's okay. We'll send the dancer to you. You'll rehearse there and fly back and forth to LA for the live show. And I said, crap. I guess I'll do it. So I agreed to do this dancing show, thinking I'll do 2 weeks, get a little bit of attention, go home, and that's it. We rehearsed in Cahaba Heights. I had no idea what a big deal the show was. They kept everything hidden. No one knew where we were. Even in the studio we were rehearsing, they spent a lot of money to take it over and hide everything on the wall so no one could pick up and know where we were. I was like, that's weird. Who's chasing down dancers? Well, I go through week 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm still there. I don't know why I'm still there. And I'm like, how do I get out of this? Well, I'm on with a couple of really cool people, one of them being Patti LaBelle. And Patti LaBelle's assistant had told me, Like, she wasn't going to stay the whole time. Like, she's ready to get back to Detroit. And he told me, he goes, I'm just trying to get her to wait till it warms up. Well, here we go into end of week 4. And she goes to the executive producers and says, I'm out. So the show made it look like she didn't get the votes. And she went home. And a light bulb, boom, went off in my head. I was like, I'm going to do the same thing. So here we go into the middle of the season, week 5. And in my head, I'm like, this is my last dance. I haven't told anybody yet. Not trying to get in trouble with my dance partner. My dance partner, Sharna Burgess, if you have seen the shows, you have the dyed red hair, amazing. Those dancers create the entire dance. Everything from what you wear to how the studio looks is the dancer's idea. They're usually just given a song and a style of dance. Everything else is left up to that dancer. So I was lucky enough to be with Sharna Burgess. She is amazing. So we're going into this 5th week. And if you've never seen the show, every week has a theme. And for week 5 of our season was most memorable year. And Sharna wanted to do more than just highlight a year. She wanted to highlight my military service. So we did a dance to Toby Keith's American Soldier. And in the dance, we did a lift that no one had ever done before. Because I did it with one arm and one leg. Halfway through the dance, we turn, she backs up, she comes to me, and I pick her up and hold her overhead. The entire studio audience jumped to their feet. When I finished and we walked up to the judges' table, I got a standing ovation from all the judges and the entire studio audience. I remember standing on that dance floor in awe of what was happening. And in my head going, that's how you go out. This is perfect. They love you. Now I can go home. This is amazing. Well, when the show ends, you have about 20 interviews you have to do. Entertainment Tonight, they're all just lined up. You go down and each one's asking the same questions. You get good at answering it again and again. It's a different network. So you have to say it like you've never heard the question before. And then once you're done with that, you go outside. There's a VIP area. They all want to meet you, take selfies with you. You finally get to your trailer. Wardrobe wants their clothes back. They're literally taking them off of you. You try to get all the makeup off your face. You get a bite to eat and you get some sleep. Because the next day is a brand new dance. And for Sharna and I, it was that long flight from LA back to Birmingham. And just because we flew did not mean we were not rehearsing the minute we touched down in Birmingham. The Tuesday nights were long nights and then back up at it Wednesday morning. So with that being said, whenever the show would end, and there's so much adrenaline going that once you're done, you crash. Well, here it was, Tuesday morning. I'm outside the hotel waiting on my car service, and I'm checking my phone. Different text messages, voicemails. One of them's a voicemail from a veteran, a Marine that I'd met running races, Anthony. And Anthony and I became really close, and he left me this voicemail. Because right before my dance, they played a video package. The videos that play before, we are never allowed to see beforehand. So a lot of times, if you've done an interview, you have an idea what it's going to be. If you ever get into an argument with your dancer, good chance it's going to be on there. The video they played before my dance was me talking about how I prolonged my depression by not opening up sooner. Well, Anthony leaves me this voicemail and says right after my dance, he got a call from a Marine he served with in Afghanistan who says, are you watching this show with this veteran? And they're talking about me. And he says, yes, I know him and this and that. And then Anthony tells me that at the end of their conversation, his friend says, Anthony, I'm struggling and I need somebody to talk to. At the end of this voicemail, Anthony says, Noah, you're positively affecting the lives of veterans. I played that voicemail for Sharna. I told her what my plan was. But then I told her that plan is out. This has become bigger than us. And we have to keep pushing. I don't know how long we're going to be on the show, but we have to push it every week. I had veterans, I had people with disabilities, I had all these different people that were reaching out to me, moved by what I was doing. I ended up doing all 10 weeks, came in third place. Afterwards, I'd meet people all the time that says, oh, you should have won, you got robbed. I always tell people the same thing. Look, Bruce Willis and Demi Moore's daughter, Rumor, was amazing. She put a lot of pressure on herself. She's had a lot of struggles in her life. I got to know her really well. I thought I was going to go home sooner. I kept telling her I was going to push everyone voting for me to vote for her. She earned that mirror ball trophy, and I'm glad she won it. Riker Lynch from the TV show Glee, super entertaining. Great dancer, second place, earned it. I tell people all the time, forget I'm even missing an arm and a leg. I can't even dance. I came in third in a dancing show. I am pretty happy with it. After that, I went on to do a show on Fox called American Grit, where I led a team of athletes, and we won that show. I did my book, Living with No Excuses. It's been an incredible ride. And before I go any further and close this, I just made it an awkward spot where I pulled this up. I apologize, but I don't want to go past it and go too far. Q&A. We had talked about doing Q&A. Now, I am not done. I don't want anybody leaving. But are there any questions right now? We may not have any because I kind of brought it at a weird spot. Where we're at right now, are there any questions that anyone has? Anything's open. For those who couldn't hear it, so Bob said he'd met another veteran that lost his leg below the knee and then was able to go back into combat. Now, when I got injured, that was not a common thing in the past. Once you were injured, you were done. But they gave me and they gave everyone an option to stay in. Now, could I have done what he did? No, I'm above the knee. I'm above the elbow. There's a lot harder things to do than that. But that option was there to stay in the military. And there were times that I looked back and thought maybe I should have stayed in, because that was a huge part of me that I lost. Because if you remember, I had mentioned that once I got into combat, I decided this is what I'm going to do. I'm either going to die in combat or retire an old man. I was never prepared for the in-between. To wake up in the hospital and all that be done. All these desires and goals that I had that I now do not have the option to do in the military again were gone. So yeah, I could have stayed in, but what he was able to do, it would just, as an infantryman, like, it's awesome that he got to. I've met a couple of guys I actually met a guy who got to go back who was above the knee. So there are those who've gotten to stay in. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I just keep doing it. No, it is. And I'm glad you mentioned that. I've got I have, my children are 20, 17, 15, and I have a 2-year-old. And my 20-year-old, just recently, I have custody of all my kids. My oldest joined the Coast Guard. This past January was his first full year in the Coast Guard. I have a 17-year-old that's getting close to graduating, and I have my daughter who's a freshman, and the 2-year-old. I have, other than the 2-year-old, I have all my children in therapy. And it was hard for me to explain to them that they needed to go to therapy when they were like, I'm fine. But like, I knew there was more going on. They realized, and I didn't ever want to blame their mothers, because I mean, we both had a part in it. But I am very much aware that the children of combat veterans have a higher suicide rate. they battle with a lot more mental health issues. It's hard enough on society as it is now. So adding that extra component, I'm very much aware of now. So I think a lot of my family, especially my parents, my sisters, we're good, always been good at sweeping things under the rug. And now they've had to come out. And I'm glad they have, because it's making a better impact on my children. Because it was putting an impression on them that wasn't necessary. You know, a side of me that was go, go, go. And then not taking the time to take care of myself. And if you don't take care of yourself, we're not able to take care of anyone else. It's that old saying we've all heard. People use it all the time about being in a plane. And they say if you lose oxygen, make sure you put that mask on your children first. No, they don't. On you first. Because if you black out, you can't do anything for anyone else. And it's like that with mental health and life in general. So I myself am taking care of my mental health, and I have all my children in mental health. Because whether there's something that is obvious or not, I know that life is hard, and me being a combat veteran has not made it easier on them. So it's been a lot of ups and downs. Yes, thank you for that question. What was my favorite race series? Well, like, you want to compare Tough Mudder and Spartan? I know. So in the world of obstacle course racing, there's Tough Mudder, and then there's Spartan. Now, Spartan bought out Tough Mudder in the last couple of years, but there was a difference. And I had done Tough Mudder first, and then Tough Mudder always took care of me. I could show up with a whole team and just walk in. No one charged me. No one cared. They'd announce me. I was a superstar before I ever went on TV, but in that small world, and loved it. But when I'd go do Spartan races, they knew me, but then they also knew I was a Tough Mudder guy. So it was always a little bit of, okay, well, glad you're here. But they were both fun. But I was big into doing Tough Mudders. I did more Tough Mudders than any of them. That was a good question. Yes. So there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. And if you haven't ever read it, I encourage you to read it. It's even one of those that you can just jump to different chapters on what you're interested in. I'm a big audiobook person. So I start this book, and it starts off with the author giving his background and talks about his first job as a psychiatrist is in the VA. And he had a patient, a client, whatever, that was a lawyer in the area, owned his own law firm, very successful Vietnam veteran that everyone loved. But at home, his family knew when to kind of walk on eggshells, when dad was angry, this, that, whatever. Well, I'm listening to it, and then I just flown back in town from somewhere, and I'm driving down the interstate, and I'm thinking, how does someone live with somebody like that? Like, I'm judging this lawyer. Like, I do not like him as a person. And my wife and I, in the last few years, have planted a dozen maple trees down our driveway. And one of them died. It was after they had a good season or two of growing. And I said, hey, let's just pay somebody to put a tree in that matches the others. And she's like, they won't do it right. It'll die. I'm like, it's fine. They know what they're doing. So I get her convinced to have someone put this tree in. Well, I come home, I'm thinking about this veteran. And I turn down my driveway, and that tree is dead. And I pull into the driveway. My son, Jack, is playing basketball. He says something. I kind of answer whatever. Then I'm in the house, and I'm grumbling. I'm moaning, blah, blah, blah. No one's around. It's like the kids have just gone. I get into an argument with my wife. I blow up. I yell, whatever. I jump in the car. I shoot out of there. I go, and I'm just sitting somewhere. and this emotion hits me so hard. I'm like, I got to go home. I start driving, and I call my wife, and I can't even, she doesn't know what's happening. I can't breathe. I get home, and I don't want to be touched. I don't know what to do. I'm in the middle of our bedroom, just standing there. My whole body's hurting, just fighting it, crying, because I realized I'm that veteran. I'm no different. For all these years, I went out and was trying to do everything I could to not feel my feelings. And so that was a defining moment in my life to be like, what is happening? Why is I was sore the next day. I did not know how to allow myself to cry. And so that started my mental health journey. I saw my therapist yesterday. I love my therapist. Microcurrent neurofeedback, EMDR, brain spotting. I've experimented with large doses of psilocybin. I've microdosed. I've gone to Peru and done ayahuasca. I am all in with whatever I need to do to be a better human. Because the person that I didn't like in that lawyer was what I didn't like in myself. And I had to do the work to change that. Now, whenever I bring up mental health to people, I always feel it's important to stress it sucks. If you're doing the real work, you're going to see a side of yourself or your life or your past that you have probably avoided. And I went through several months, if not the first couple of years, of doing more crying than I've ever cried in my entire life. But it was necessary. There were many a nights when everybody went to bed, I have stood in my kitchen just sobbing, thinking, oh, why wasn't I doing this? Why wasn't I doing that? Have I missed out with my time with my children? Is it too late? But it's never too late. I can't change the past. I'm very grateful for the life I've had. But if I could change anything, it would be that I would have slowed down sooner and taken that moment to sharpen my blade and truly appreciate the beauty in life. Because I see the world completely different now. To a point that it blows my mind how differently I view the world and how that's even capable. I told somebody the other day, it's like I was looking through life in a dirty lens, but I didn't even know it was dirty. And then it's when I saw what it was like through a clear lens. Well, you can't go back. All you can do is move forward. And I'm going to close with that. I'm glad you asked that question. Because if there's anything I can leave all of you with, is to take that time. Like I said, I'm very appreciative of everything I experienced. Magazine covers, television, all these amazing things, but I was never fulfilled. Now that I've slowed down, I can truly appreciate life. Because what's important to me, my purpose is my family. And as much as I would give things up for them, I was also super busy. And my family don't care how famous I am. They just want that quality time with me and to know they're loved. And that's the life I'm leading now. In fact, everyone I've come across, friends I haven't seen in a while, they're like, are you traveling a lot? Because I've always been known to travel a lot. And I love to travel. But this year's the year. I have told my family, this year I'm not going to travel as much. This is where I'm making a difference in my family's lives, to make sure they know I'm there. I've transitioned. I started a YouTube channel where I was injured. This Christmas will be 20 years since I was injured. For 19 years, I have stood at podiums on stages, done interviews on magazines, told my story on television. But now I'm ready to share other people's stories. And that's what I was telling my daughter the other day. This doesn't have to be big. I'm not going to be famous on YouTube. I was like, but I'm going to build a community and make sure that I am another person that is making mental health normal, open, having that conversation. Because that's what's important to all of us, to make sure you take the time to sharpen your blade and enjoy those moments. The title of my book is Living with No Excuses. The title of the podcast is Living with No Excuses. I tell people all the time, that is not the old style, pull yourselves up by the bootstraps type of mentality. No, this is there is no excuse not to take care of yourself, to make sure you're capable of taking care of others. Thank you very much.